Welcome to the Catholic Midlife Podcast, where we address the challenges and the opportunities of midlife from a uniquely Catholic perspective. This is the time, my friends, for a deeper renewal of your Christian vocation. Come and enter into the freedom of Christ that allows you to be the person you were created to be, because there's an amazing, awesome, exciting next season of life waiting for you. Hello and welcome to the Catholic Midlife Podcast. You are here with Karen and Curtis Herbert.
Hey, everyone.
And we are in our Easter season talking about the Easter virtues.
It is the Easter season, my friends. Try to go out and plant some seeds. Get some new life pumping.
Wonderful. We have a listener comment this week. Someone wrote in and said, "Thank you so much for your podcast. It is life-giving to me, full of hope and wisdom."
Oh, that is a wonderful tribute. Thank you. Thank you so much for that.
It's an honor that we are actually communicating hope, which is one of our goals.
And we want you to be full of hope and wisdom, my friend. And what a great theme for Easter.
It's beautiful because Jesus is risen, and that means anything is possible.
Everything is possible.
Curtis went to a funeral this morning, and the priest quoted something I thought was beautiful for this season. It's from 1 Corinthians chapter 3, where Paul says, whether it's the world or life or death, whether it's the present or the future, everything belongs to you. And that really deeply moved me. Everything belongs to us because we belong to the Messiah.
And the members of the family of that man paid tribute to his optimism. He was a man of great optimism among many other qualities that they loved about him.
Yes. So he was a person full of hope, living in the kingdom and receiving everything that belongs to him. And that is a great introduction to our Easter virtue today, which is magnanimity.
Oh, dun, dun, dun. It's a call, calling us onwards.
Yes, and magnanimity is perfect for Easter because it reminds us that truly everything belongs to us that God intends, and there is a greatness, there is an excellence, there's so much potential that we have to step into.
Magnanimity, I'm pretty sure it's not something I hear much about. It just, I don't talk about it. I don't hear about it. Why?
Well, I've heard it called the forgotten virtue.
Right. Okay.
At some level. And I'm not totally sure why. I think it could be that we have this sense that stepping into greatness or excellence is somehow a form of pride, or having a big dream is like something we're not supposed to do as Christians.
Right. Ambition is something we can be warned against.
Yeah. Yeah. But magnanimity reminds us that very often it's not that we're hoping for too much. It's that we're settling for too little.
Ooh, settling for too little. I hear that.
It's just as common for us not to appreciate our own greatness in the light of Christ as to overthink our own greatness.
We can be tempted to complacency. And you just said our greatness in the light of Christ. It reminds me of the song that says, you are to the person. You are who I say you are. So God says, you are who I say you are, and I created you well.
That's lovely. The slogan that comes to me is that old one from the Army commercials. Be all that you can be.
Be all that you can be.
In the Army. and it sounds silly, but really part of magnanimity is appreciating all that we can be and then having the courage to be that person.
In the parable of the talents, there's the servant that buries their talent and doesn't get any increase on it. And then there's servants with different degrees of opportunity, I guess, different amounts, and they bring a good return on it. So magnanimity sounds like it's something along those lines.
I think that's a great parable for magnanimity, and especially because the person who hides their talents does so out of fear. And fear is a key obstacle to living with magnanimity, is fear. And versus the people who risk, who step out, even though it's kind of unknown what's going to happen, they have to put their trust in what's going to happen when they step out for something for God.
Fear versus trust. Oh, now we're stepping into the middle of the battleground right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as somebody who was a lawyer for many years, it's a risk-averse profession. And stepping out through fear, I mean, I have a lot of sympathy for that guy that didn't want to lose any money.
Well, I've always sort of related to him, actually. I've always kind of been like, well, what's wrong with that? That seems really safe to me. Yeah, it is. It is. So what does a magnanimous person look like?
Great
That's
question.
Kind of a question.
I should go look in the mirror, maybe.
What do I see?
Yeah, don't do that. I don't think I'm going to do that.
Well, the first one, it kind of connects to what you just said, Curtis, is the magnanimous person really keeps their eye on the truth, and the truth in a lot of different senses. So first of all, they really understand who they are, and they have a strong sense of self-identity. So this person knows himself or herself to be worthy because of God, to know themselves as beloved by God, and understand this innate beauty and dignity they have as a human being, first and foremost, and also as an adopted child of God.
Appreciating their participation in the divine kind of creates a need for agency.
Right. Well, it just opens up, it cracks open this reality that we get to step into. I think magnanimity, it means you understand that and you receive it as part of who you are.
Now you've got me thinking about hiring people. So you could
something
be...
you've done in the past.
Yeah, sure. You're the master in the parable and you hire, again, say 3 workers, and one of them shows up and does what you tell them. That's pretty good. You're happy. So when they're done, they come back and you tell them another thing to do, and then they go do, and they go do that.
Yeah.
And that's good. Now, the next person that you hire, they do what you ask, and then they get pretty good at it. And pretty soon they know what needs to be done, and they just go off and they take care of it. And they get back to you and say, okay, this is what I'm doing. What kind of input do you have? And you're like, wow, this is great.
I want somebody like that.
Yeah, because it multiplies your time.
Yeah.
And then you have another worker that does what you ask, and they're able to get it done and figure it out. But then it's like they're thinking on the same side of the table with you. They are thinking creatively. They're starting to see new opportunities, other possibilities. And wow, what a wonderful person to have on your team.
Sure.
That's helping you at the highest levels.
Sure, because it's stuff that maybe you wouldn't necessarily even think of yourself to teach them.
And they are really stepping into that role. They're owning it, and you're just loving it.
I think that's a really nice analogy. There's something just so beautiful about that last image, especially it's got to be a person who knows who they are and what their gifts and strengths are and how to enter into this whole thing that's going on in whatever business you're running.
And growing in magnanimity, we're maturing in our roles as God's people.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there's just getting back to this sense of seeing truth is that person has to see very clearly what they do, what their gifts and strengths are, what perhaps they don't do so well, but who they can find to pull in to be a part of that team.
Okay, she liked my analogy. That's
I
good.
did.
That's,
Sorry about
that
getting
doesn't
on
always
that.
work out that way.
That's a good point. It's a good point. Also, I think the magnanimous person, they appreciate their weaknesses and their sin. However, they don't get stuck in them. They don't become overwhelmed or discouraged because there's this trust in God to make up for what is lacking.
Yeah, that goes back to that strong sense of identity in God. And so things aren't working out. Well, does it mean you're some kind of terrible person? It means that you want to try a different approach.
Yeah. Yeah. So the opposite of magnanimity is the pusillanimous person.
Oh, the pusillanimous person.
Good job with that word. Yes, the pusillanimous person. And the thing about the pusillanimous person is they are a small-souled person. So they don't understand the greatness inside them, and they're going to settle for being less than they could be. So one of the authors I was reading said, when you're faced with the effort and difficulty of stretching yourself to do these great things, the pusillanimous person just kind of cringes and says, well, I can't do it because, I'm just looking at my own puny powers and I might fail and I'm afraid or I'm intimidated, rather than relying on God's grace to equip them for the great work he's calling them to.
We can take refuge in our strategic incompetence. So I can't do that. I'm no good at that.
I've started to be convicted here. We're talking about this.
Yeah, well, it is convicting, Karen. It really is. And it's a virtue that's much needed. I think we all sense that the Catholic Church can be very passive. Mm-hmm. And we, as parishes, are often very involved on what happens within the walls of the parish. But as soon as we look outside and think about doing more and engaging for Christ with mission and evangelization, it suddenly becomes overwhelming and intimidating. Mm-hmm. And it is difficult because we need each other. We need each other to help each other to do that sort of thing. But just thinking about this virtue, it's an antidote to that passivity and lack of creativity, lack of initiative.
Yes.
So all you people, get moving out there.
Everybody else,
I've got things to do, but you guys could get busy over there.
A lot of times magnanimity can be seen in the light of your vocation, your mission, your call. And it just speaks to this understanding that each person is unique and created specifically for purpose and for meaning, and that we each have a call, a mission, a variety of vocations to step into. And part of magnanimity is being able to make this wholehearted response to God when we're discerning a particular call or mission.
Oh, better watch out. We're getting into the dreaded D word, discernment.
Oh, I know.
We love to go off and discern. Don't bother me. I'm discerning. Well, when are you going to stop? Oh, it's going to take a year or two. I'm going to sit here and discern.
Unfortunately, I can't just discern until I'm done because I'm relying on God to show me something, which may or may not be immediately discernible.
Well, we can laugh because I think we've all lapsed into this sort of discernment loops. However, this is a great point that you bring up, Karen, and that's that we are all different. And I know that my thinking it's so human. When I think of greatness, I immediately think of achievement, accomplishment, all the kinds of things that the world holds out to us as success. However, God's operating with a much different value set. And so as we discern, as we try to learn, as we practice, as we attempt to grow in this, did you say kind of vocational direction or directions, it's not necessarily going to be some human wow thing.
Yeah. And it might not be even super clear sometimes because God is surprising and he'll do amazing things that we would not expect on our own. But when we are feeling the nudge, the urge, the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. The magnanimous person kind of gathers their own personal resources to respond generously and wholeheartedly to what God is asking.
Okay, so you've talked about the magnanimous person as having their eye on the truth. So that's the strong sense of self-identity and understanding how God sees them. And then you just spoke about the person that makes a wholehearted response. And so they're drawing their personal, their spiritual resources to respond. So what else? What else do we hope to see in the mirror one day?
One day. Well, I do believe there's a great sense of courage in the magnanimous person, because it takes a lot of courage to step through the fear that we talked about earlier that can hold us back from responding to God. So, there's different virtues that come into play in different circumstances, but I think magnanimity really shines when it confronts obstacles, difficulties, really formidable situations, but moves through them anyway in the service of this bigger vision or call from God. And so there's this courage to undertake risks and difficult things when you really believe that God is asking you to.
The willingness to keep moving, to try to be faithful to the inspiration and keep going.
Yeah. And even if you're getting criticized by other people, or they have a negative opinion of you, or you might fail, there's this kind of confidence in God and God's provision and a readiness to try, to attempt, even if it seems daunting or impossible.
Oh, here's a quote that you wrote down. It's from Pope Benedict XVI. Man's heart is too small for the greatness to which it is destined. It must be stretched.
Isn't that a great quote? It is so true, because in order to receive this greatness, there is this stretching that happens. So I think the magnanimous person is willing to do that, is willing to be stretched, is willing to grow by what God is asking. And even if I have a sense of my own inadequacies, that's not going to stop me or overwhelm me.
Okay, courage and being stretched. Okay, what else? What else are we going to see in the mirror? Okay.
Well, I think this kind of follows, but perseverance. Perseverance through the challenge and the obstacle, and not shying away when things get hard. So you're not going to give up on this thing that you feel God is asking of you. And you're not going to be turned aside. You're going to get feedback. You're going to see what works and what doesn't. You're going to grow, but you're going to persevere.
Perseverance. Humility. And I can't remember if you mentioned this already, but humility goes hand in hand with magnanimity. Humility is a wonderful virtue that gives us a lot of perspective. And as we see our call to greatness, humility can counter it, can help us in a lot of ways.
Well, a lot of times I think we don't perhaps strive for magnanimity because we really are focused on being humble. But part of humility and its foundation really is this focus on the truth, on what is true about me and my relationship with God. I'm dependent on God. What is true? God has created me in a certain way. What is true? I am asked to step into greatness. So yes, magnanimity and humility are sister virtues, and they really work together to point us into this beautiful greatness that God has. It doesn't deny our own greatness and strength. It doesn't attribute them to us on our own. It understands what we've received from God. In fact, it's often the case that the pusillanimous person underestimates the value of what they have received and what they can do with it, while the magnanimous person believes whatever they've received is of great value and is enough.
Wow. So if you believe you have enough, then you've accepted what there is to accept, and you're ready to do what? Own your agency.
Yes.
I love that insight, Karen.
Mm-hmm.
The other thought I had as you were speaking is that the virtues, they really don't occur in isolation. So every virtue, it speaks to a quality of the person that you can have too little and you can have too much.
Mm-hmm.
And the virtue is always trying to get it in the middle. And the example I always think of is in Heidi's book about the virtues, and it's generosity. We want to be generous people, but if we're over generous, we're spendthrifts. If we're under generous, we're stingy. So all these virtues have this continuum.
One thing that I was thinking of is, magnanimity. It's a great Easter virtue because it really appreciates what the resurrection has done and what that means for us. I also think it's a great virtue for midlife because, as we've said before, Curtis, so many of us get to midlife and it can be a little discouraging because we think about sort of all the hopes and dreams that we've had that perhaps didn't come to fruition. And we might shy away from making more big dreams and big hopes. We might think that that's not for us at this time of life. And I believe that God is saying that's not true. We always can dream big, and there's always greatness waiting for us.
Boy, Karen, that resonates. It's much easier for us to cash out our chips and take the big or small amount and just kind of start coasting. Yet midlife is a time of opportunity because we have learned so much. We've been through so much. We have so much to live and to give and to contribute and to win, fight, and lose and triumph and suffer and everything else. There is a lot of life left in us, and magnanimity calls us on to make the stretch choice, to reach for the potential that's there, that's in each of us. A human being is always full of remarkable and unexpected potential.
Yes. Now, next week, we'll be talking about a virtue, and we really want to set it up here because the virtue we're talking about next week relies on both magnanimity and humility as its foundation. And that's the virtue of hope. If we want hope, we need to have these two virtues working together.
And hope it's unexpected in so many ways how central it is to our Christian life. I mean, of course we know that, but I mean, this is a wonderful virtue. I can't wait to talk about this. We've talked about it a little bit, Karen, and I'm looking forward to sharing this with our listeners.
As always, we'd love to hear what you think about the podcast. Shoot us an email at thecatholicmidlife@gmail.com and invite a friend to listen.
Yeah, share us your thoughts and your questions. We'd love to answer them and know what you're thinking. Thanks for being here with us. The Catholic Midlife Podcast is for anyone that wants to receive the abundance of life that God has for each one of us. Take a moment right now to tell a friend about us.